Good afternoon, everyone. Did everyone have a great lunch so far? Well, I hope it meets your expectation. Thanks once again for joining us on AWS Summit 2022 Singapore. And my name is Vincent. I'm a senior solution architect here with AWS, and together sharing the stage with me is Delson and Kai Hong from GovTech. And we will be sharing with you on an exciting project called GovWallet, its impactful initiative, and how it's using serverless to accelerate innovation in the public sector. This is the agenda that we will be covering. What is serverless? Why serverless? How exactly does serverless accelerate innovation? We'll look into GovWallet in detail, and from there, we'll close. Now, as you might have heard from the keynote in the morning, one of the things in AWS is that we get the privilege and the joy to work with a lot of our customers, both in public sector and commercial, in their innovation journey. Part of that allows us to observe a few key things. Number one, when it comes to innovation, is the important need to get to market faster when it comes to your product and your services because of the rapidly changing landscape. Secondly, while every innovation set out to do certain target, achieve certain goals, it's important that innovation is able to be flexible and adaptable to the changing needs that comes along the way. And thirdly, while innovation is focused on the business, focused on the users and experience, it's imperative that it's able to be secure and isolated by design. And lastly, we know that success is never guaranteed. It's important to fail fast, able to iterate, able to change. And that means that experimentation costs got to be kept to a low to facilitate all of that. Taking a step back, let's take a look at to see how the cloud computing world has evolved over the years to support innovation from back in the physical machine days. Back in the physical machines days, it requires gas planning. And a lot of this gas planning, it involves high capex investment that goes into things like your wiring, your networking, your server racks, your security personnel. Now we know all these are very important, but they may not translate to a high innovation factor, and deployment could be onerous and lengthy. Moving forward from there, we come into virtual machines, and that's where we have the big onset of cloud, where we start to migrate workloads from the physical machines over to virtual machines. And that helped us to drastically reduce provisioning time from what it used to take months to get a piece of server to run our workloads. You can now run your workloads from a matter of hours to minutes. Resources is a lot more elastic, scalable, and agile, and maintenance is kept to a low. And moving forward from there, we come to a place of containerization. Now, you probably heard of buzzwords like Kubernetes, Docker, container orchestration. We come into the place of platform independence, where you can build your container once and run it many places. With containers, now a lot of things are even more abstracted and virtualized. Your containers are kept lighter, and you can deploy them in seconds. Moving up the ladder to the highest level of abstraction, we are at where we are today, serverless. That enables you and teams to focus most of your attention on your business logic. Important areas of concerns like continuous scaling is being handled by the platform. Fault tolerance are often built in. At the same time, serverless is often event-driven. You are paying for value. And when it comes to maintenance, it's kept to zero or minimum. So what is serverless? With serverless, you can shift operational responsibilities over to AWS, giving you a larger focus on your agility and innovation. And with serverless, it comes with a few benefits. Number one, there's no more infrastructure for you to provision. Well, it certainly doesn't mean that there's no more servers to run, but it just means that you do not have to manage those servers. Well, this means a few key things. Number one is that when it comes to scaling, it's a lot more flexible. You can scale from zero to scale, and from scale back to zero with little to no configuration. And serverless allows you to pay for value as well. Well, we know that with cloud, you are essentially already paying for value because of utilization. But serverless takes it up another notch because instead of just paying by the seconds, you now have the ability to pay by the milliseconds. Take Lambda, for example. If you run your code for 50 milliseconds, Lambda bills you 50 milliseconds each time you run that piece of code. At the same time, above and beyond all these various benefits, serverless does not compromise on its high availability and security. Well, one of the exciting things about serverless is that we have seen serverless grow from one product to a whole suite of offerings and product services. From running your workload in Lambda, you can now run your containers in Fargate, and you can even now run your containers back in Lambda as well. When it comes to your data storage needs, you can store your data objects in AWS S3, which is our serverless data lake. If you are a big fan of relational databases like MySQL, well, you can run them on Aurora Serverless, one of our fastest growing products. And if you are a big fan of NoSQL databases like myself, you can run those in DynamoDB, a high throughput, low latency, single-digit millisecond performing database for all of your NoSQL needs. And at the same time, beyond all these various compute and data storage options, AWS, we have a whole set of integration tools that help you to glue all these components together. For example, AWS API Gateway for your API proxies, SQS for your queues, SNS for notification, step functions for orchestration, Kinesis for messaging, AppSync for GraphQL, and also EventBridge for events. And all these different integration tools help you to integrate your modern distributed landscape in a much more faster way than ever before, allowing you to innovate at speed and at scale. Well, so how does serverless accelerate innovation? Let's take a look at some of the key features that enables that. Firstly, serverless itself by nature is event-driven. Taking a product like EventBridge, for example, it comes with 140 different integration sources out of the box, meaning to say, when your components in your landscape need to talk to one another, you can have an ease of integration and have to write little to no code for you to send events from one to another. Secondly, when we want to move fast, it also means that your developers got to move fast as well. And that means giving them choice. Now, a show of hands. How many of you here are Java developers? I see a few hands. How many of you here are Node.js developers? I see some more hands as well. All right, whether it's Java developers, Node.js, Go, Ruby, Python, well, you'll be happy to know that in Lambda, we have 12 different runtimes that's able to support various programming language needs. Meaning to say, you can just bring your workload to the serverless platform and run it as it is. But we do know that sometimes you may have custom requirements, and that's absolutely fine as well. You can bring your custom runtime onto AWS, and AWS can run those runtimes for you in a serverless fashion. Now, thirdly, when it comes to operational concerns like configurations, monitoring, logging, whether is it a server workload or serverless workload, you've got to have them handled. But the good thing is that with serverless platform, you can get to the ground running quicker because a lot of these operational concerns are already being handled out of the box. And fourthly, most of us here would be working with 1, 2, or even more third-party products. Well, you can easily integrate them to your serverless solution through the use of extensions. Well, and at the same time, we now live in an automated DevOps and an IAC world. You'll be happy to know that in AWS Serverless, you can work with a whole suite of different IAC tooling for you to automate the deployment of your serverless infrastructure across multiple projects, across multiple environments, and even across multiple developers and users. Taking a double click into the ease of integration, out of the 140 integration that comes out of the box with EventBridge, over 42 of them are SaaS-based. Meaning to say, if you are using a tool like Auth0 or Okta for authentication, or using Salesforce for CRM, or Splunk, or various different of these tools out there, you can easily integrate the SaaS application in your enterprise landscape back to your serverless workload with little to no code at all. Also, we like to say that when it comes to serverless platform, it's a continuously growing and evolving platform. Should you have the need to run data-intensive function, Lambda can run up to 10 GB to support those workloads. Secondly, if you are running file storage workloads and using EFS, you can use AWS Serverless Lambda to scale those compute for that. And thirdly, you may have a demanding workload and you could run into cold start issues. You can use provision concurrency to preempt a set of warm functions to overcome the cold start problems. And at the same time, your innovation might be nationwide impact and you have a huge base of users. AWS Lambda itself is a 1 million TPS service that's able to support your massive concurrency need. And lastly, all the things that I mentioned above, they are but just a fraction of the features in serverless platform. In Serverless, we aim to serve you with new features again and again to help you to improve your innovation by enabling you to move at greater speed and at scale. From there, I'd like to now invite my customer, GovWallet, to the stage, Delson, software engineer from GovTech, as he share about GovWallet, this exciting project, and how it's impacting the citizens of Singapore through the use of AWS Serverless services. Please join me to welcome him on the stage.
Okay, thanks, Vincent, for the wonderful sharing. Hi, everyone. My name is Delson. I'm a software engineer from the GovWallet team. First of all, I just want to thank Vincent and the AWS team for having us here today to share our experiences. I want to start off by sharing about how GovWallet started, some of the features that we've built, and why we decided to use serverless. Subsequently, I'll pass my time on to my teammate Kai Hong to share about some of the services we use, as well as some of the learning points that we had throughout our entire journey. So let's begin. What is GovWallet? GovWallet essentially allows Singapore citizens to easily spend their government payouts just like any other e-wallet mobile application. What we do is that we help to facilitate the distribution and usage of payouts from agencies to citizens. And we do that by leveraging local PayNow and Nets e-payment ecosystems to perform all these payments. So some of the campaigns that we currently support include the CPF Workfare Income Supplement Scheme. It's a scheme that helps to supplement the incomes of some of our Singaporeans monthly. And currently they're using physical paper checks, but for us, we provide an alternative with digital disbursement. We also support the Health Promotion Board credit scheme as well, where Singaporeans can earn credits by participating in healthier activities. We support multiple Ministry of Defense and Ministry of Home Affairs campaigns, but one campaign is NS55 that some of you might be familiar with. $100 of credits given to past and present national servicemen. So, how it all starts is that we perform a direct disbursement of money into the user's GovWallet via LiveSG, our mobile app front-end partner. This allows us to see all the government payouts in a single place, and if they choose not to use their credits or whatnot, we can provide reminders as well. At the same time, now there's an ease of merchant onboarding because we are making use of an existing infrastructure known as SGQR, where merchants have already been onboarded on. That means that merchants no longer need to be onboarded for campaigns each time manually. At the same time, we now remove the need for physical vouchers and checks. That also means that the merchants no longer need to do physical reconciliation of the vouchers after every campaign. Lastly, we provide instant notification of payment. So once the transaction goes through, it's around near real-time settlement as well. So a short video of how GovWallet works. Upon logging into your LiveSG mobile app, you'll be able to see your balance. You just need to look for a QR code that's eligible, scan it. You can just make your payment with just a slide of a finger, and you are done. Very intuitive experience. So at this point of time, I want to highlight how GovWallet actually started. It started as an internal proof of concept, known as GovTech Appreciation Token. We started discussion in November 2020. Our focus at that time was to build back-end e-wallet features, things like disbursement, payments, and subsequent expiry of the disbursements. We also focused a lot on the integration with our payment providers, as well as the LiveSG mobile app. That means that for us as a team, we actually spend minimal time on the infrastructure itself. So ultimately, we were able to deploy our application for use by early March 2021. So that took us approximately 4 months. So why did we choose serverless as our solution? One of the key reasons is actually developer experience. So us, as developers ourselves, we appreciate that it's extremely easy for us to set up the required back-end infrastructure. This frees up more time for us to actually work on the features that directly drive business value. And also now, our team can actually develop features concurrently as well. Next is about scaling flexibility. Because serverless is pay-per-use, we don't have to worry that much. We scale up with higher usage. And as I mentioned earlier, we started with a POC of only about 100 GovTech employees. And now we are able to scale to an island-wide distribution, NS55, with hundreds of thousands of users. Next, we also appreciate that it's quick to market. Because we are an agile team, we want to quickly get our product into the hands of all our users. And we want to gather feedback as quickly as possible, make enhancements along the way, and iterate as we can. And should there be any issues on the ground, we can perform patches and fixes as well. As a matter of fact, we are currently doing deployment very regularly, every other day. So lastly, serverless provides managed services. So what that means is we don't have to worry that much anymore. We don't need to worry about maintenance, we don't need to worry about upgrades of our servers and things like that. And it provides us an ease of access to the entire ecosystem of AWS services. So I will share a little bit about some of the infrastructure that we use. Currently, we have API Gateway, AWS Lambda. Those are our APIs, our endpoints. We store our transaction data in Amazon DynamoDB, and some other forms of data in S3 as well. We have a virtual private cloud for some of our private resources, and we have CloudWatch for our logging, monitoring, and our alarms. Extremely important for us because we want to have insights on what's happening on the ground. We have our systems and secrets managers to store our environment-specific variables. And all in all, how we actually provision our entire infrastructure is using two things. Terraform together with serverless framework, using a process called infrastructure as code. So infrastructure as code, or IAC for short, what it does is that helps us automate the entire infrastructure provisioning process by representing our infrastructure into configuration files. And these files are written in code. So just like any other forms of function code, it allows us to perform versioning. And what that means is that now we can track our changes. And if there's any issues with a new version, we just roll back to the earlier one. Lastly, we like that with IAC, it helps to reduce possible configuration drift. That means that our infrastructure is extremely consistent throughout the environments. And that is very important for us when we are supporting multiple concurrent distributions. So as I mentioned earlier, we use multiple AWS serverless services. Serverless together with IAC helps us to build our serverless applications faster by firstly removing the overhead of integrating with multiple services, and at the same time, automating resource management. Essentially, what Terraform together with serverless framework does is that it builds on something called AWS CloudFormation and allows us to represent the entire collection here into a single unit called the AWS CloudFormation stack. This means that our developers in the team, our engineers in the team, they can spin up individual CloudFormation stacks in development and know that it's consistent to the infrastructure to that of our production environments, the live environments that are currently in use. So right now, it allows us to actually work on our features concurrently as a team, knowing that, first of all, it's isolated to that of the work of your teammates, and at the same time, we are confident that it will translate well to the production environment. After completion of our development work, we will move on and promote these changes to our staging environments, our user acceptance testing environments. And these environments actually have a mirror image to the production environments. Right? This means that, for example, an NS55 campaign right now, we also have an NS55 staging campaign. And that is where we perform our campaign-specific testing. Upon completion of that, we will finally promote it to our production environments for the citizens to start using them. At this point of time, I do want to highlight a key point. How we are able to handle multiple concurrent distributions is through the use of something called the environment variables, like I mentioned earlier. And what it does is that it caters to specific settings for each different campaign. So some of the settings could include eligible merchants for that campaign, or the payment providers, the banks of the campaign as well. That also means that down the line, if there's a need for us to have a new campaign onboarded to GovWallet, we will just need to spin up a new production environment and a staging environment. We add the required environment variables, and we will be able to cater to their specific settings. As such, the GovWallet team, we believe we are future ready. In the event if there's an increase in volume of consumers and users on the ground, we believe that with the help of serverless, we are ready to scale. And should there be agencies out there that require our support, our team is confident that we'll be able to meet their needs. As such, I'd like to thank all of you for your time again. I'll pass my time on to my teammate Kai Hong. Let's give him a round of applause.
Hey. Thanks, Dawson, for that awesome sharing on GovWallet and its features. Hi, everyone. My name is Kai Hong. I'm a DevOps engineer from the GovWallet team. And I'll be sharing about 2 key AWS services that we use, as well as some key takeaways that we had from the process of building GovWallet. So the first service that we use is AWS Lambda. Dawson shared a lot about why we use serverless and how we use serverless to accelerate our development. But why AWS Lambda specifically? Well, because it has these features that are desirable for GovWallet. AWS Lambda has the lowest management overhead compared to the other tech stacks. It is well integrated with the AWS services that we use, and it has on-demand scaling. All these features allow us and our engineers to focus on just the code and not the infrastructure, so they can deliver more business value to our end users. As Vincent has shared earlier, we chose AWS Lambda because it has the highest level of abstraction, so all the way on the top right-hand corner over there. Also, it has low to zero maintenance. So zero maintenance is very attractive to us because with less things to maintain, we can move faster and be more agile. AWS Lambda integrates with over 115 AWS services. So I'd like to highlight 4 that we use. We use Lambda to run cron jobs from EventBridge, to process queue messages from the simple queuing service, and to transform data streams from DynamoDB for reporting purposes. We also use it to react to file upload events. All of these integrations come out of the box, so our engineers do not have to spend any time writing any abstraction layers on top of it. This saves us a lot of time, again, helping us to move faster and to be more agile. Next, Lambda's on-demand scaling feature means that we do not have to guess our capacity. So this allows us to defer our capacity planning until we have real production data to work off on. This helps us immensely when we are deploying any new campaigns, and we always spin out new campaigns, right? So when we spin out new campaigns, you don't know what the load is going to be like. So the on-demand feature helps us a lot in that case. So speaking of campaigns, here's a campaign that you should have heard of by now, which is the NS55 campaign. So GovWallet is responsible for dispersing credits to all citizens who have served in the national service from past to present, and handle the transactions for all these dispersed credits. AWS Lambda was able to scale seamlessly to handle the load from staging to production. And I'd like to share some interesting metrics from our environments. So for our staging environment, we see about 125 invocations in a week. And then when we launch in production, we scaled to over 3.8 million invocations, which is a 30x increase. So this seamless scaling happened with no configuration changes and no intervention on our end. We were able to reap the benefits of Lambda's ability to scale at scale. For our use case at least, there was essentially no bottleneck for our compute layer. All these features allow our engineers to focus on just the code and not the infrastructure. As Dawson have shared earlier, we were able to bring the GovTech Appreciation Token campaign from concept to production in just 4 months. The other key point was that we actually did it with only 3 developers. So 4 months, 3 devs. AWS Lambda is one of the key enabling factors, and our engineers have worked really hard to make this timeline possible. So let's move on to our next key service, which is DynamoDB. DynamoDB is a NoSQL database, and we chose it because it is fully managed. Again, zero maintenance, very attractive. We want this because it helps us to move faster. It also has low latency response times and on-demand scaling. So overall, just a high-performance database. Earlier, I mentioned that our compute layer has essentially no bottleneck for our use case, but every system has a bottleneck. Otherwise, it would just go infinitely fast. We have essentially moved our bottleneck from our compute layer to our database layer. Thankfully, DynamoDB on-demand scaling feature allows us to adjust this bottleneck freely. This means that DynamoDB will help to choose the right capacity based on the load that is placed under. Again, no guessing of capacity. We can defer the capacity planning until we have real-world production data, allowing us to move faster, to be more agile, right? So I think you're seeing a trend with how we make our decisions. So going back to the launch of NS55, our baseline for our database was about 9 writes per minute. DynamoDB was able to scale to over 2,000 times in capacity, bringing it up to over 21,000 writes per minute. Again, this was done with no intervention on our end. So our engineers are able to rest more because they don't have to wake up early in the morning to manually scale our services. And anyone who has worked in operations would know this pain. All of these things about serverless make it sound like magic, but well, serverless isn't magic, it's managed servers. So our responsibilities as engineers have shifted from managing the servers ourselves to understanding the scaling characteristics of serverless. Going back again to our NS55 metrics, you can see that out of the 21,000 peak write capacity that we had, 2,000 of them were actually throttled. So roughly 10% of the traffic. This is due to how DynamoDB scales and its scaling behavior. So I'd like to give a quick explanation for why this happens. DynamoDB has the ability to scale to twice its peak capacity, well, pretty much instantly. The problem was that when the traffic hit us, we consume all of that capacity, well, instantly, right? So at that point in time, what we needed was a lot more, and all this additional scaling of capacity will take some amount of time. So AWS recommends us to space traffic where possible. In short, this is why we were throttled. If I were to overlay our throttled events on top of our traffic with a purple line, you can see that the number of throttled events go down over time, even though our load stays roughly similar. Right? So an example of the scaling behavior of DynamoDB. Understanding the scaling behavior is very important to us because ultimately it's about understanding and choosing the trade-offs. So serverless is a great tool, but it's still a tool, and tools can fail. So we should always design with failure in mind, and retries are a really simple way of managing these failures. Case in point, out of the 2,000 events that you see were throttled, all of them eventually succeeded because we had a retry mechanism to retry those throttled events once the database had time to scale up. Now that we have a better understanding of how our managed service behave, what's next? It's optimization. So the goal of optimization is to make our system more cost efficient, more performant, and to be more responsive to traffic surges. One way to mitigate the DynamoDB throttling behavior that I've just shared is to have a mix between on-demand and preemptive scaling. So on-demand is pay per request, it's the default mode, but it has this predefined scaling behavior as I've shared earlier. If you look at the graph on the right, you can see how the capacity of our database can lag behind the traffic under certain demanding circumstances. So by implementing preemptive scaling, it gives us back the control over the scaling behavior. And when we preemptively scale the database, it's able to match or cover the entirety of the traffic that we expect. So the trade-off to doing this is that we have to pay for all the planned capacity. If you were to look at the curves again, you'll notice that for the preemptive curve, it doesn't hug our traffic as tightly, right? So this will definitely incur some additional costs, right? But for our use case, we believe that it's the right trade-off as it gives our end users a better experience. Next, we plan to implement the Lambda provision concurrency. So what it does is it reduces the Lambda's function cold startup from seconds to milliseconds, essentially keeping it warm. So this will help to improve our API response times across our services. Optimization is a bit like a whack-a-mole, right? We remove one bottleneck, but then we can be certain that another bottleneck will appear elsewhere. So our goal is to remove as many bottlenecks as we can, and the more we remove, the faster our system will be overall. I hope you have learned more about GovWallet and gained some insights to our decision-making process when it comes to choosing serverless as our tech stack. Right, that is all from me. I'd like to welcome Vincent back for the closing, and thank you all for your time. Yeah.
Wow, wow, wow. What a great sharing by Dawson and Kai Hong about the exciting project of GovWallet. I hope you have enjoyed the session so far. So as you have seen in the earlier sharing, just give me a second to go back to the slide. As you have seen from the earlier sharing, well, serverless, it does a few key things. Number one, it gives you a wide set of tools and product offerings for you to rapidly develop your workloads. And secondly, with serverless, you can now shift your responsibility when it comes to operations over to AWS, giving you a larger focus on your innovation and agility. Well, if you are interested to find out more about serverless, I'm pleased to inform you that we have more sessions coming up. Over later at Nicole Tree, where we have a session covering modernizing your online learning experience with AWS. And also at 3:05, we have a session covering next-gen applications on event-driven architectures. And at 3:55, if you are interested on AI Ops, there will be a session covering about boosting your serverless application availability with AI Ops on AWS. Now, in AWS, we have a whole wide suite of in-demand AWS cloud skills. On your left, we have AWS Skill Builder that comes with more than 500 over free digital courses. And all the courses that's over there is catered for different skills level, whether it's fundamental, expert, or intermediary, you have them over there. And at the same time, we know that today we have a global audience from the ASEAN community. You'll be pleased to know that it comes with 16 different supported languages. And on the right, there is AWS certifications. Should you be someone that's already experienced with AWS, or you're already on a journey to gaining cloud skills, I'd like to encourage and invite you to consider gaining yourself one of the 11 AWS certifications. This industry-wide recognized certification serve to confirm, validate, and gains you confidence when it comes to your cloud journey. Please feel free to scan the QR code on your left and your right to gain access to this digital content. Now, lastly, we want to thank you from myself, Dawson, and Kai Hong for joining us today. We enjoyed this time sharing with you about GovWallet,